For most people, death is something you avoid. It's an intruder, right? An unwelcome guest. But for Edgar Allan Poe, well, it was a lifelong companion. It was the one shadow that literally never left his side. And in this explainer, we're not just looking at some horror writer. We're going to dive into the life of a man whose entire existence was this deep, obsessive conversation with death itself. I mean, that's just beautiful, isn't it? It's this promise of a love so strong, so powerful, that nothing, not angels, not demons, can ever break it. It shows you that Poe, he got love. He understood beauty on a really profound level. But that was the big, dark question that just haunted him. It's a question that sits at the very heart of all his work. What happens when the people, the things we love most, inevitably just decay and fade and leave us all alone?
And this, right here, this is the key to understanding Edgar Allan Poe. He didn't just write about death from a distance, he knew it up close. He met it when he was just a kid, he lost to it over and over again, and eventually, this dark obsession became the very engine of his work, turning him into one of the most important writers ever.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the unending tragedy of his childhood. Then we'll see how he used those scars to create a whole new kind of horror. After that, we dive into the love and loss that led to his masterpiece. And finally, we'll look at the incredible blueprint he left behind for everyone who came after him. So we have to start at the very beginning, because Poe's super dark outlook on life, well, it wasn't some artistic style he chose. It was forged piece by piece in a fire of constant loss that started almost the moment he was born.
And just look at how fast this all happened. Before he was even 3 years old, his entire world just fell apart. His dad, gone. His mother, dead from tuberculosis, a disease that would haunt his entire life. And then he was separated from his brother and sister, completely alone.
Now, on the surface, it sounds like he got a lucky break. He was taken in by a rich merchant, John Allan. But here's the thing. Allan never actually adopted him. Their relationship was cold. It was transactional. So for Poe, that middle name, Allan, it was just a constant, painful reminder that his spot in that family wasn't guaranteed. It was conditional. And this right here, this slide just lays out the fundamental clash that defined his early life. John Allan wanted a businessman. He wanted someone who cared about profits and ledgers. But Edgar, he was all about poetry. He loved books, he loved language, all the things his foster father thought were a complete and utter waste of time. So naturally, this whole situation was a recipe for disaster. Allan sent Poe to university, but he basically set him up to fail, giving him way less money than he needed. Poe gets desperate, turns to gambling to try and make ends meet, and you can guess what happens next. He racks up a ton of debt and has to leave school in total disgrace, a failure in the eyes of the one man he so desperately needed support from.
So after failing so spectacularly in his foster father's world, Poe decided to build his own. And this next part of his life, this is where he takes all that pain, all that trauma, and channels it into something brand new, something revolutionary.
And this is absolutely crucial to understand. Poe wasn't writing about cheap jump scares. He was basically inventing what we now call psychological horror. He took terror out of the spooky graveyard and put it right where it's most effective, inside the human mind. He started writing about guilt, madness, obsession, all the dark stuff we try to pretend isn't there.
This quote just nails his whole vibe perfectly. See, back then, American literature was all about sunny optimism and heroic characters. Poe looked at that and was basically like, that's nice, but what if we dig underneath? What if we look at the rot and the violence and the darkness that I know is hiding just below the surface? And the tragedy is, his life just kept giving him more material to work with. His foster mother died. She was pretty much the only source of warmth in that house. Then his brother died. And guess what? Both from tuberculosis. So his writing got even darker. He dropped any youthful idealism and just dove headfirst into themes of decay, dread, and this suffocating sense of being trapped.
All right, now we get to the emotional core of Poe's entire life. We're talking about his intense love for his wife, Virginia, and the absolute terror of watching her die from the exact same disease that had already taken so much from him. So he married his young cousin, Virginia, and for Poe, she was everything. In a world that had only shown him coldness and loss, she was this beacon of warmth and innocence. She was his anchor. She was the one person keeping him from just completely spiraling into darkness. But in Poe's life, joy was never, ever allowed to last. This moment, it's the beginning of the end. A single drop of blood. And he knew. The family curse, tuberculosis, had finally come for the only light he had left in his life. Now, Virginia's sickness wasn't quick. It was a slow, agonizing decline that stretched on for years. And during this period of just absolute helplessness and dread, Poe wrote some of his most suffocating and famous work. You can feel his anxiety bleeding onto the page in these stories. His life had become a prison, and so did his writing. And then, he wrote The Raven. And you have to understand, this poem wasn't just a scary story. It was his reality. It's about a man being tormented by the loss of his love, haunted by this creature that can only say one word, like a final judgment on any hope he might have left: nevermore. When Virginia finally passed away in 1847, that was it. The last anchor holding Poe to the real world was just gone. He'd always written about being alone with death, but now he truly was. He descended into a darkness so total, he would never find his way out again. But here's the incredible twist in the story. Despite his tragic end, despite all the pain, Poe's work was about to change literature forever. His life was short, yeah, and it was brutal, but his influence, it's almost immeasurable. His death was just as strange and dark as one of his own stories. In 1849, only 2 years after Virginia died, he just vanished. He was found days later on a street in Baltimore, delirious, wearing clothes that weren't his. He died in a hospital 4 days later, and to this day, nobody knows for sure what happened. Lord, help my poor soul. Those were reportedly his final words. I mean, what a haunting final line for a man who spent his whole life wrestling with the darkness, both out in the world and inside his own head. And yet look at the shadow he cast. His words just refused to die with him. He basically invented the modern detective story. He laid down the blueprint for every psychological thriller you've ever seen. Guys like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes and H.P. Lovecraft, called him a master, a god. His influence stretches across almost 2 centuries of stories, movies, and art. It's incredible. In the end, I think Poe's greatest trick wasn't just showing us horror. It was showing us the beauty and pain all mixed up inside of it. He showed us that love hurts so much because it matters so much, and that we fear death because life is so precious. He taught us that the scariest monsters aren't hiding in the closet. They're the thoughts we can't escape inside our own heads. So the real question is, once you know what to look for, where don't you see his shadow today?